Imagine being handed, the absolute royal knowledge and the royal secret of the universe. Just handed right to you.
Right. It's a massive claim.
It really is.
Yeah.
A supreme wisdom that perfectly combines this profound, mind-bending understanding of the cosmos with the simple, honestly incredibly transformative power of everyday devotion.
Yeah. That synthesis is exactly what makes it so unique.
And that is exactly what is unveiled in Chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is what we're exploring today on this deep dive into simplified awakening. But before we get into the Cosmic Code, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and share your own reflections in the comments below. We genuinely love reading what you think about these deep dives.
We really do. And, it really is the ultimate philosophical paradox that we are looking at today.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about a text that attempts to explain the infinite, the unmanifest, the very fabric of reality itself, and yet its ultimate conclusion is remarkably accessible.
Right. It doesn't ask you to retreat to a cave.
Exactly. It doesn't ask you to do that at all. It asks you to fundamentally alter how you interact with, like, your Tuesday morning commute.
I love that. And, we all know the basic setup of the Gita. You've got Arjuna freezing up on the battlefield of Kurukshetra.
The ultimate existential crisis.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got this charioteer who is, well, obviously much more than a charioteer, Krishna.
Right, and it's worth noting the historical context here. Scholars debate the exact timeline of this event at Kurukshetra. Some place it as far back as 302 BC.
Wow, that is incredibly old.
It is. Others argue for around 1400 BC. But Krishna himself was a historical personage. I mean, he was even referenced by the Greek ambassador Megasthenes around 320 BC. So we are grounded in a historical tradition here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we know that the great philosopher Adi Shankaracharya, whose commentaries from around the 7th or 8th century basically laid the groundwork for how we understand these texts today, he viewed all of this through a non-dual lens.
Yes, Advaita Vedanta.
Right. But out of all 700 verses in the Gita, Chapter 9, which is the Rajaguya Yoga, it is consistently pointed to as the absolute peak. Why is this specific chapter the core of the entire text?
Well, because it synthesizes everything. You see, by the time we reach Chapter 9, the philosophical groundwork has already been laid out in the previous chapters.
Right.
So now, Krishna is ready to reveal the absolute heart of the message. And Shankaracharya views this as the inextricable link between knowledge and devotion.
So they aren't separate things.
Not at all. This isn't blind faith, right? And it isn't dry academic philosophy either. It is a devotion that arises spontaneously from a profound understanding of reality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Shankaracharya's perspective is that when your knowledge is that deep, it becomes devotion. And when your devotion is that pure, it naturally becomes knowledge. They lead directly to liberation.
That immediately challenges how we normally categorize things, doesn't it? I mean, we tend to think of the intellectual path and the devotional path as two entirely separate tracks.
Yeah, completely separate silos.
Right. Like you either have the scholars in the library or the devotees in the temple. But Krishna guarantees that this wisdom is simple and meant for absolutely everyone.
It's total accessibility.
Yeah. But before we even get to the substance of this royal knowledge, there's a fascinating prerequisite mentioned right in the first verse.
Ah, yes, the required mindset.
Exactly. Krishna essentially tells Arjuna, I'm going to tell you the ultimate secret of the universe, specifically because you aren't given to caviling.
Caviling.
Yeah. That word really stopped me in my tracks. Caviling. It means like petty fault finding or just having a cynical, mocking attitude.
It's such a crucial psychological insight into the nature of learning. The Sanskrit concept here touches on the absence of malice and the presence of genuine faith, or shraddha.
But I want to push back on that a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Because to a modern ear, demanding that someone not be critical, it sounds a bit like demanding blind compliance. Shouldn't we be questioning things? I mean, isn't skepticism healthy?
Well, skepticism in the pursuit of truth is healthy. Absolutely. But caviling is not the pursuit of truth.
Okay, how so?
Shankaracharya points out that caviling is a fundamentally destructive impulse. It's not asking questions to understand something. It's asking questions to tear down the speaker.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, it's looking for logical loopholes just for the sake of your own ego, or to mock something profound. If you approach a deep spiritual truth with a mind that only wants to find flaws, you are completely closed off to the experience of that truth.
Your energy is entirely consumed by the resistance.
Exactly. You're too busy fighting to actually listen.
It's almost like imagine handing someone front row tickets to the best symphony in the world.
Okay.
and they sit down in the concert hall, but they are absolutely determined to only listen for someone coughing in the audience.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. They are entirely focused on the flaws, the background noise. You can't experience the profound beauty of the music if your default setting is suspicion and petty critique. You just miss the symphony because your brain is locked onto the static.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The music is playing, but the receiver is tuned to the wrong frequency. And what Krishna is offering here requires an open frequency.
As we move into the next segment, I want you to listen closely to Krishna's profound declaration of Raja Vidya and Raja Gutya, and notice how he describes his relationship to the universe. Pervading everything, yet contained by nothing.
Yes. The text describes this teaching as Rajavidya, which is the sovereign knowledge, or the king of sciences, and Rajaguhyam, the sovereign profundity.
The ultimate secret.
Exactly. And it uses very specific adjectives here. It says it is the best sanctifier, it is righteously aligned, it is very easy to practice, and crucially, it is patyaksavagama.
Patyaksavagama, which means
Directly realizable.
Directly realizable. That phrase leads right into a distinction Shankaracharya makes that I find incredibly relevant for us today. The difference between Jnana and Vijnana.
Oh, yes. Understanding this difference is honestly the antidote to the information overload we all suffer from today.
Oh, seriously.
Yeah.
We're drowning in information.
We really are. So Jnana is theoretical knowledge. It is knowing the concepts, reading the scriptures, memorizing the philosophy.
Right. It's reading the menu.
Exactly. Vijnana, however, is experiential realization. It is actually eating the meal.
Wow.
Krishna is promising that this isn't just another layer of theoretical cosmology for Arjuna to memorize. It is an awakening that you directly perceive and experience within your own consciousness.
I love that. I mean, I can read 1,000 books on the chemical composition of an apple, but it doesn't mean I know what an apple tastes like.
Exactly. You have to take a bite.
But here's the part that feels structurally massive to me. The text calls this realization the greatest sanctifier. And Shankaracharya goes incredibly deep here, saying, this knowledge reduces to ashes the results of all actions.
Both righteous and unrighteous.
Right. Accumulated over thousands of births. How does that actually work mechanically? I mean, how does having a realization literally burn past karma?
Well, to understand the mechanism there, you have to look at what binds karma to a person in the first place. Karma, which is the result of past actions, it clings to the ego, the sense of, I am the doer.
Right, the personal self.
Yeah. When you act from a place of limited ego, you are generating a reaction that the ego must eventually experience. But this royal knowledge, this Vijnana we were just talking about, is the experiential realization that you are not the limited ego.
So you realize you are the infinite, unattached consciousness.
Yes.
So if the I that committed the actions is suddenly recognized as an illusion, the baggage attached to that just drops.
Exactly. Think of it like this. If you dream that you committed a crime and you owe a massive unpayable debt,
Okay.
the moment you wake up, that debt completely vanishes. The realization of the waking state burns the karma of the dream state.
Oh, wow. That is powerful.
The fire of this knowledge burns away the ignorance that anchors the karma to you. That is why it is the ultimate sanctifier. It doesn't just clean the slate, it removes the slate entirely.
Which makes the flip side of this incredibly stark. Because verse 3 notes that those who lack faith in this, who basically reject this true nature of reality, they just continue going round and round in the cycle of transmigration.
Yes, samsara.
Right. And the text explicitly calls this cycle fraught with death. They just miss the exit ramp entirely.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a punishment being inflicted by some wrathful god, though. It's more like, if you refuse to believe the lifeboat exists, you're going to stay on the sinking ship by your own choice.
It is the natural consequence of anchoring your identity to the ephemeral. I mean, if you believe your entire existence is tied to temporary, changing things like status, wealth, or even just the physical body, you will inevitably experience the death and loss of those things over and over again.
Because all of those things eventually end.
Always.
Okay, so if we accept the value of this knowledge, we then hit what has to be the most mind-bending section of the entire text, the grand paradox. Verses 4 through 10 outline the core metaphysical reality of the universe. Krishna says, the entire world is pervaded by me in my unmanifest form.
Okay, omnipresence makes sense.
Right, sounds standard, but then he hits Arjuna with, all beings exist in me, but I am not contained in them.
It starts to get tricky there.
And if that wasn't confusing enough, he immediately follows it with, nor do the beings dwell in me. Behold my divine yog. I mean, my head is spinning. How can all beings exist in him but not dwell in him?
It really is the defining paradox of immanence and transcendence. And Shankaracharya unpacks this puzzle with stunning clarity by asking us to basically reconsider the nature of the Supreme Self.
Okay, walk me through it.
Well, our brains naturally think in terms of physical containers, right?
Sure.
We think of a cup holding water. If the water is in the cup, it is touching the cup, and the cup contains it.
Right, it's a spatial relationship,
Yeah.
boundaries.
Exactly. But the Supreme Consciousness is formless. Because it is formless and completely unconditioned, it cannot be a container in any physical sense.
Oh, I see.
Therefore, from the perspective of absolute reality, beings do not physically or spatially dwell in him because there is no spatial boundary to cross.
Let's ground this a bit. I was thinking about this earlier, and the best way I can conceptualize it is like the code running a massive open-world video game.
Oh, that's interesting. Go on.
So the digital code pervades every single pixel, every tree, every character, every mountain in the game.
Right.
All the game's beings and landscapes exist entirely within the framework of that code. They literally cannot exist without it. But the code itself is not contained by any single digital tree. If a character chops down a digital tree, the code isn't harmed.
That's perfect. And to complete the paradox, the digital tree doesn't physically dwell inside the code because the code isn't a physical place.
Right. The tree is simply an expression of the code.
That analogy aligns perfectly with the metaphor Krishna actually uses in verse 6.
Oh, what does he use?
He tells Arjuna to look at the voluminous wind moving everywhere in space. The wind is ever present in space, right? But it does not bind or alter the space itself. Space contains the wind, but space is completely unaffected by the wind.
Space doesn't get wet when it rains inside it, and it doesn't blow away when it's windy.
Precisely. The supreme reality is like that space. It holds the entire manifestation of the universe, but it remains fundamentally untouched by anything that happens within it.
But that brings up a really tough concept.
Let's hear it.
The text says, he is the sustainer of all beings. He supervises nature prakriti, which produces all things. But then it says, he remains entirely unattached. The specific word used is Udasinavat,
Yes, Udasinavat.
which translates to like an unconcerned spectator.
It does.
I have to be honest, unconcerned spectator sounds incredibly cold. It sounds like a deadbeat dad universe.
I can see why you'd say that.
Why would anyone offer devotion to a reality that is fundamentally unconcerned with them? That sounds more like nihilism than a comforting spiritual truth.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because the translation of Udasinavat can easily be misinterpreted through our modern emotional lens.
Okay, so what does it actually mean?
It does not mean apathy. It does not mean malice or neglect. It refers to the absolute purity of unconditioned consciousness.
How is being unconcerned pure? I'm still stuck on that.
Think about a movie screen.
Okay.
The screen allows the movie to happen. It supports the romantic comedy. It supports the tragic war film. It supports the documentary.
It's the foundation for all of it?
Yes. The screen is intimately involved in every single frame of the projection. But the screen does not get burned when a fire is projected onto it.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't get wet when an ocean is projected. It remains a pure, changeless witness. If the screen were, if it reacted to the movie and tried to get involved, the movie couldn't actually play.
Because the screen would be twisting and changing.
Exactly. The detachment isn't a lack of love. It's the structural necessity that allows free will and nature to actually function.
That is wow. So nature, Maya, does all the heavy lifting.
Yes. Nature does the work of creation, maintenance, and destruction. It operates according to the laws of cause and effect, karma, physics, biology. The Supreme Consciousness provides the vitalizing presence, the space for all this to happen, but it does not get tangled up in the localized drama.
Because if it did, it would be chaotic.
Right. If God were emotionally bound by every action in the universe would be an unbearable knot of cosmic anxiety. The pure witness is what guarantees the absolute stability of reality.
That makes a lot more sense. The screen allows the movie to exist, but the screen isn't the movie.
Well said.
Which actually explains the next major problem the text addresses, verses 11 through 25.
Human delusion.
Yes. Because if the ultimate reality is this unattached, formless space, how are we supposed to recognize it? These verses outline this massive human vulnerability. We constantly miss the divine because we get distracted by the movie.
We get caught up in the drama.
Right. Krishna notes that foolish people disregard him when he takes a human body. They just see a regular guy driving a chariot.
This is the veil of Yogamaya, the divine delusion. Shankaracharya explains that people lacking discriminative wisdom are just totally mesmerized by the finite.
They can only see the surface level.
Exactly. They look at a physical form and they mistake it for the totality of the person. They see the wind and completely ignore the space holding the wind.
There is such a deep psychological truth to this that extends way beyond ancient charioteers. I mean, we are conditioned to look for the miraculous in burning bushes and splitting oceans. We look for fireworks.
We want the grand spectacle.
Yes. And because we are constantly looking for fireworks, we miss the profound miracle of a simple conversation or the rhythm of our own breath or the incredible complexity of a single drop of rain. We get completely caught up in the mundane packaging of reality and miss the infinite underlying it.
And that failure of perception dictates the entire trajectory of a person's life. The text contrasts these deluded individuals with people of firm vows who strive with true devotion.
So what are the devoted people actually recognizing?
Well, Krishna declares in verse 19 that he is everything. He's the heat, he is the rain, he is immortality, and he is death. He is existence and non-existence.
So literally everything. There's nothing outside of this reality.
Nothing.
So if you realize that, what happens to your spiritual practice?
This brings us to the core of Advaita, or non-dual philosophy. Shankaracharya states that the enlightened devotee worships with the realization, I am this one.
I am this one, meaning no separation.
Right. There is no separation between the worshiper and the worshipped. The ignorant, however, worship with the thought, he is one and I am another. They maintain a strict duality.
And because they maintain that duality, their spiritual goals remain limited.
Exactly.
The text actually addresses that directly, doesn't it? It says that people who worship other gods with sacrifices eventually reach those gods, but those who worship the Supreme directly reach the Supreme.
It is a profound statement on the mechanics of desire and worship. Look at it this way. If your spiritual goal is transactional,
Like asking for a favor.
yeah, say you pray to a specific concept or deity because you want worldly success or a good harvest or even just a pleasant afterlife in some heaven,
Okay.
you are worshiping a limited, conditioned aspect of reality. And the text acknowledges that the universe will respond to that. You will achieve that limited goal. But it remains temporary. It is still within the realm of the finite.
Because you asked for a finite thing.
Exactly. If your goal is ultimate liberation, you must bypass the transactional entirely and direct your devotion to the absolute, unconditioned reality itself.
Which raises a terrifyingly practical question.
Okay, what is it?
If the Supreme is this vast, uncontained, non-dual code of the universe, how is a normal person supposed to interact with it? Do we need to build a massive gold-plated temple just to get its attention?
I see where you're going with this.
Right, like, do we need a PhD in Sanskrit to perform the exact right ritual? Because traditionally, reaching the absolute highest tier of the divine required an unbelievable amount of resources.
It did. And this is where Chapter 9 executes a complete revolution. It takes the highest, most abstract cosmic truth and radically democratizes it.
Pay special attention to this next part. Listen for Krishna's beautiful assurance that even the simplest, most humble offering is entirely accepted when given with love. You know, reading through these verses, the thing that actually broke me down, the most arresting moment in the entire chapter was verse 26.
The offering verse.
Yes. The assurance Krishna gives here is almost shockingly intimate. He says, "Whoever offers me with devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I accept that gift of the pure-hearted man which has been devotionally presented."
A leaf, a flower, fruit, water.
These are things that absolutely anyone, regardless of wealth, status, or education, can find.
And in the context of the ancient world, we really cannot overstate how disruptive this statement is.
Because of the rituals, right?
Yes, Vedic religion was heavily centered around elaborate fire sacrifices, the yajanas. These required massive wealth, specific animals, precise geometric altars, and highly trained priests.
It was an exclusive spiritual economy.
Exactly. And Krishna completely bypasses the entire institutional structure. Sincerity becomes the sole currency of the divine.
I always think of this dynamic like a parent and a young child.
Oh, I like that.
Like a toddler might run out into the driveway and bring back a slightly dirty, crushed dandelion. Or maybe they make a messy macaroni necklace covered in cheap glitter.
Right. The classic macaroni necklace.
The parent doesn't look at that necklace and say, well, the market value of this pasta is 0 and the craftsmanship is shoddy, so I reject this offering.
Of course not.
The parent treasures it. They might even put it in a frame on the wall. Why? Because the object is just a physical vehicle for the child's pure love and intention. The intention literally transforms the mundane object into something sacred.
That captures the precise psychological shift Krishna is demanding. The divine reality doesn't need your gold or your perfect rituals. I mean, the universe already owns all the gold. What it receives is the frequency of your devotion. And he doesn't stop at leaves and flowers. In verse 27, he expands this principle until it consumes the entirety of human life.
He says, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer as a sacrifice, whatever you give, and whatever austerities you undertake, all that you offer to me.
That is massive.
It really is. It means spirituality isn't confined to Sunday mornings or 20 minutes on a meditation cushion.
This is the heartbeat of karma yoga, according to Shankaracharya. The path to liberation isn't about halting your daily activities.
You're going to have to quit your job and move to the forest.
Exactly. It's about shifting the internal attitude behind those activities. You still eat your meals, you still go to your job, you still fold the laundry and take care of your children.
But the motivation changes.
Yes. Instead of doing these things solely for your own egoic satisfaction or out of a sense of burden duty, you dedicate the act itself to the Supreme.
So doing the spreadsheets at work, if done with a dedicated, unattached mind, becomes the exact same thing as sitting in deep meditation.
Yes. Because by dedicating the action, you relinquish the ego's neurotic grip on the result. You act, and you act well, but you are not psychologically crushed by failure, nor are you arrogant in success.
You're just an instrument.
You act as an instrument of the whole. And what happens when you do that? Verse 28 gives the result.
Yep.
You become free from the bondages of actions.
So you stop accumulating karma.
You stop accumulating that sticky karma we talked about earlier because the I that was accumulating it has surrendered its claim.
The action just loses its ability to trap you.
Exactly. You turn the mundane reality of ordinary life into an ongoing, continuous state of liberation.
Okay, but if the simplicity of devotion is the absolute key, and all it takes is a leaf, water, and a pure heart to bypass the ego that naturally leads to a radical inclusivity.
The gates are thrown wide open.
As we approach the climax of this deep dive, listen for Krishna's teaching on his absolute impartiality and his incredible assurance that no devotee is ever lost. Because, man, the gates aren't just open, they are blown completely off their hinges.
They really are.
Which leads to this incredible sequence on impartiality and redemption. Krishna states in verse 29, I am impartial towards all beings. To me, there is none detestable or none dear.
Okay, total neutrality.
Right. But then he immediately adds a caveat. He says, however, those who worship me exist in me and I in them. Now, hold on. If he is truly impartial, how do the worshipers get a special VIP connection? That sounds like a contradiction.
It does. It really does, until you understand the mechanics of the relationship.
Right.
Shankaracharya resolves this beautifully with the metaphor of fire.
Okay, how does the fire work?
Well, a fire does not possess personal biases. It does not look at a crowd of people and decide to warm one person because it likes them and leave another person cold because it finds them detestable.
Right, fire is just fire.
Exactly. It simply radiates heat equally in all directions.
So the fire is completely impartial.
Completely impartial, but if you choose to stand 50 feet away from the fire, you are going to be cold. If you choose to step close to the fire, you are going to be warm. The fire didn't play favorites with the person who is warm. That person simply utilized the fire's nature by drawing near.
Oh, I see.
God does not hate the ignorant or favor the devotee. The divine presence is radiating equally everywhere. The devotee has simply chosen, through the act of devotion, to step close to the warmth. The intimacy is determined by the individual's approach, not by God's preference.
Wow. That completely flips the script on how we view divine reward and punishment. It's not a cosmic judge handing out sentences. It's literally just the physics of consciousness.
Physics of consciousness, that's a great phrase.
Which sets up what might be the most controversial yet powerful promise in the entire text. Verses 30 and 31, they deal with the ultimate redemption of the fallen.
The redemption of the sinner, yes.
Krishna says that even a person of very bad conduct, a profound sinner, is considered good if they worship with one-pointed devotion. He says they quickly become virtuous and attain everlasting peace, declaring, my devotee does not get ruined.
It's an incredible promise.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Isn't this just a spiritual loophole? Does this excuse bad behavior? I mean, it sounds like you can do whatever terrible things you want, and as long as you say a quick prayer with a leaf, you get a get-out-of-jail-free card.
It's a critical question, and one that theologians have wrestled with for millennia. Is this a loophole for hypocrisy?
Right.
Shankaracharya is emphatic that it is not. The key to understanding this is the Sanskrit phrase samyak vyavasita, which means he has resolved rightly.
Resolved rightly.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practice?
This is not a superficial apology. It is not a deathbed confession made out of fear. It is a profound, foundational, atomic-level shift in consciousness.
So what does that internal resolve actually do to a person's habits?
Well, think about how habits and actions are formed. They're driven by desires, right? By
Mhm.
the ego trying to extract happiness from the material world.
Yeah.
A person of very bad conduct is acting out of a deep delusion, frantically trying to serve their ego. But when true, one-pointed devotion takes root, the center of gravity in that person's mind completely shifts.
Oh, I see.
They are no longer seeking fulfillment from the external world. They are oriented entirely toward the absolute.
And because the internal engine has changed, the external exhaust has to change.
Precisely. You cannot maintain one-pointed devotion to the supreme reality while simultaneously plotting to harm your neighbor or steal. The two states of consciousness are mutually exclusive.
They just can't exist in the same brain.
Right. The devotion acts like a massive surge of electricity that rewires the neurological and spiritual pathways. The text says they quickly become virtuous. The external actions align with the new internal reality.
They become what the text calls a dharma atma.
Yes, a soul of virtue, because the ignorance driving the bad behavior has been burned away by the warmth of that fire.
So it's not that the bad actions are just ignored by a forgiving judge. It's that the devotion literally destroys the psychological machinery that produced the bad actions in the first place.
Exactly. It's a complete transformation.
That is the ultimate message of hope. It completely dismantles the idea of being too far gone. You can never wander so far into the cold that you can't turn around, step toward the fire, and immediately begin to thaw.
And that message of universal access extends to breaking down the rigid societal barriers of the time, too.
How so?
In verse 32, liberation is explicitly offered to everyone, regardless of social background. It specifically mentions women, Vaisyas who are merchants and farmers, and Sudras who are laborers.
To put that in context, we really have to remember the orthodox environment of ancient India.
It was incredibly strict.
Right. Access to formal scriptural study, the chanting of the Vedas, and the complex rituals was highly stratified. It was generally restricted to male Brahmins and Kshatriyas.
Yes, the spiritual hierarchy rigidly mirrored the social hierarchy. So by explicitly stating that the highest goal, the direct realization of the supreme, is fully available to those who are marginalized by the orthodox establishment, Krishna is dropping a philosophical bomb.
He's leveling the playing field completely.
He is definitively stating that the unconditioned reality does not recognize human social categories. The soul has no caste, no gender, no socioeconomic status.
Because, as verse 33 points out, the material world is anityam asukam lokam, ephemeral and miserable. It is transient.
Yes, it's all temporary.
So whether you are a king in a palace or a laborer in a field, your material situation is ultimately temporary and completely incapable of providing permanent peace.
It's a losing game either way.
Exactly. The only logical, lasting solution for anyone is to anchor their mind entirely on the eternal.
That is the ultimate synthesis of Chapter 9. The material world is a fleeting projection on the screen. Do not anchor your identity to the movie. Anchor your identity to the screen.
So to bring this massive cosmic journey back down to Earth for a moment. The royal knowledge, the sovereign secret of Chapter 9, is that the ultimate truth of the universe isn't locked away in a complex formula or restricted to the elite.
Not at all.
It is shockingly simple, wildly profound, and entirely liberating. It is the realization that the transcendent code running the universe is also the intimate reality within your own heart.
Beautifully said.
And engaging with it requires no grand gestures, just the quiet internal dedication of your daily actions and a sincere approach. Whether you are offering a leaf, drinking a glass of water, or typing an email at your 9-to-5 job, you have the power to turn that mundane moment into an act of profound spiritual connection by simply shifting your intention.
When knowledge of the ultimate reality fuels your everyday actions, ordinary life becomes the path to freedom.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to explore on your own. We spend so much of our lives looking for the right conditions to feel spiritual. We need the room to be quiet. We need the perfect lighting. We need to be on vacation away from our stress.
We make so many excuses.
We really do.
Yeah.
But if the supreme reality is truly an impartial fire that accepts everything from a crushed dandelion to the mundane act of eating your breakfast, How does that change your approach to tomorrow morning? What if the frustration of your commute or the repetitive chore of washing dishes aren't obstacles to your peace, but are actually direct, immediate portals to the divine, just waiting for you to change your frequency?
That is a powerful lens to look through.
It really changes everything. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. As a quick reminder, if you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe, like this video, and drop your reflections in the comments below. We really do read them and love exploring these ideas with you. Join us next time as we continue our journey into Chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga, where we'll explore the breathtaking divine glories and infinite manifestations of the universe. Until then, keep diving deep.